If you have ever seen a BMW with over 200,000 miles, hit that thumbs up. But even better, if you've seen a BMW with over 300,000 miles, then hit that notification bell as well. My favorite part of the channel is really when you guys comment and tell me about your car buying experiences. A lot of times I hear, hey, I bought this car after watching your channel, it got me really motivated, and that makes me feel a lot of responsibility, and I want you all to have a great buying experience when you do pick up your first BMW, or even any BMW for that matter. Buying especially your first BMW can be a little bit scary. Are all the stereotypes of them being unreliable true? Or are the enthusiasts right? That if you take care of them and maintain them well, then they'll last you a really long time. Today we are going to go over the 3 deadly mistakes that you never want to make when you're buying any BMW, but especially the first BMW. Now, make this mistake once, that's a learning experience. Make it twice, that's on you. With that said, let's get into number 1. The number 1 rule, the number 1 deadly mistake that you never want to make is buying the BMW that's a good deal. Especially the best deal. It can be really tempting to try to get into one of the lower priced cars and think, yeah, I'm getting to this awesome car for a really good price. And usually getting a lower price on a vehicle is better. But in this instance, getting a really low price is badder. Now, when you get into one of these vehicles and buy it for a really good price, you could be thinking that you've scored. The cost of ownership is going to be really low, but it pretty much always ends up being more. There's a reason why that car is sold for a really good deal. It's kind of hard to figure out sometimes why it is that good deal. Sometimes they can look really good from the outside, but there's just some lingering problems or some things that have been pretty easy to hide that you'll find out later and are going to leave the big repair bill in your hand. And the cost of ownership is just going to be more, but along with that, you're going to have the headache that comes with it. So stay away from the really good deals. Typically, these kind of cars that are sold really cheap have a history of nothing but deferred maintenance. When little problems come up here and there, or even big problems, the people who own those cars just don't take care of them, and it starts adding up. And instead of taking care of those 2 or 3 things every year that end up being wrong, next thing you know, you've got it 5 years later and there's 15 or 20 big problems that you got to take care of. It's just not worth it. Now, there is an exception to the rule, like I mentioned, and one of those is maybe it's sold cheap for a bigger reason that the seller disclosed. Like for instance, I saw an E46 for sale recently that was much cheaper than the rest, but it's because it's the middle of winter here in Utah. I mean, you can see my freaking breath for crying out loud in this video, and the heater didn't work. So I was texting him, asking him some questions. I just was curious. He said that he ended up replacing some parts of the cooling system recently, and ever since then the heater never worked. Now I knew that car would be a great deal because all it would need is for me to bleed the system, and then the heater would probably work. That's a good example of something that you can get into if you know what the problem is and everything else is in good condition. So now that we know you don't want to get a good deal on a BMW usually, we can get into number 2, and that is not leaving enough room in your budget for a fresh start after you buy that vehicle. So there's some things like the cooling system, well pretty much that's the biggest one in BMWs, that really is kind of like a ticking time bomb that will go off at some point. You need to be the one to take care of that. I don't care if the person who had it before said that they took really good care of it and maintained it well. If you do not have purchase receipts or service records of things like the water pump being replaced, the radiator, the coolant expansion tank, those types of things, if they have not been done within the last 30,000 miles, you need to do them right when you buy the car. That's one reason why I've had such a good experience with my M3, because right when I bought it, I took it to a BMW performance shop and I said, hey, before I get into any mods, make this sucker bulletproof. And that's exactly what they did. They changed all the gaskets, like the valve cover gasket. They changed the oil filter housing gaskets so that I haven't had any oil leaks since I bought this car 4 years ago. And I haven't had any problems with the cooling system either, because literally everything in the cooling system I replaced, and it was worth it. Don't stop with just the cooling system either. Change all the fluids. I'm talking the oil, the freaking transmission fluid, the differential, all of it. So whenever you're budgeting for a car, leave like $500 or so if you can do the work yourself for all of that cooling system stuff, any oil leaks, and you're gonna have a good time. And in a lot of these instances, it actually leaves you an opportunity to upgrade a lot of these parts, like go for an aluminum radiator instead of one that's plastic all over it, or go for a water pump with a metal impeller, and then you don't have to worry about it breaking so commonly, and it actually will last you a long time. Now, the 3rd deadly mistake that you never want to make is one that I actually posted a poll on my YouTube channel and had a lot of you guys respond, and I was kind of surprised with the responses that it got. What you never want to do is skip a PPI before you purchase, or a pre-purchase inspection. Some of you guys may think that you can inspect the vehicles yourselves, and maybe if it's not that big of a purchase, you can kind of get away with it. But let me tell you, there are things that you cannot see, or things that you cannot get good detail on unless you've got a lift and can get the car in the air, or unless the seller's going to give you enough time to do things like take out the spark plugs, do your own compression test, cylinder leak down test, maybe stick a bore scope down in there, and really check things like the suspension thoroughly, the subframe mounts in the back of the car to see if any metal is cracked thoroughly. There's things that you just need time to do. And sometimes just taking it to a BMW specific shop who really knows what the common problems are specific to the vehicle you're looking in can really pay off. And the cost of those pre-purchase inspections is cheap. They're usually like $100 to $150, and that can save you a crap load of money in the future. One big reason why you always want to get a PPI done before you purchase is it can honestly save you money. Not because you're not going to have to deal with repairs you didn't know about, but because if you can find out things that are wrong, you can negotiate those with the seller, because chances are they may not have known what some of those problems are either. And if all of a sudden this huge list of problems comes up, you can bring the price down a little bit. In fact, with this M3, when I purchased it, I got a pre-purchase inspection done, and the person who inspected the vehicle told me that it needed new motor mounts and it needed new power steering lines because there was a power steering leak and there was also a slight coolant leak. And I was able to negotiate the price down an extra $1,000, even though it didn't cost me $1,000 to go ahead and fix those problems myself. Another big one that they're going to do in a pre-purchase inspection that you're not going to have time for, maybe even the tools, is to check to see if there might be a leaking head gasket. Because of the common deferred maintenance problems, people not really taking care of these cars that well, a lot of times the cooling system will fail, and when that happens, the car will overheat. And when that happens, you have a high chance of warping or cracking the cylinder head or blowing the head gasket. If you ever see cars with a blown head gasket or any sort of coolant problems or overheating problems, it can be because the car is overheated and now it needs some major engine work. You want to avoid that, and finding out if that is a problem is a really simple thing if you've got the right tools. So leave it to the professionals, leave it to the people who know what they're doing. Even if you think that you really know what you're talking about, if the seller won't give you the time, or if you can't get underneath the vehicle safely to really check things out, it's not worth forking thousands of dollars out into a vehicle and what could give you a bunch of headaches. The reason why enthusiasts say that if you take care of them, they'll last you a long time is because it really is true. These engines that are in these BMWs, especially the older ones like E30s, E36s, even E46s, if you take care of them, they will last you a long time, and you can beat on them and they'll last you a long time. So if you want to have a good experience, which you do, follow these steps and you will. Guys, I hope this was beneficial to you. Like I said, I love hearing your comments about vehicles that you bought. If you have any crazy stories about something that you've purchased and what you've dealt with, or what you actually avoided and did good on, then put it down in the comments. We all want to hear it. I want to hear it. If you guys enjoyed today's video, give me a big thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, hit that freaking subscribe button and the notification bell, and I'll see you guys in the next one.